But going back to magnesium, it's a big element. Of course, that's an element in the bodybuilding world around cramping. So when bodybuilders would get on stage in an ultra dehydrated state for the stage presentation, which is not necessarily a healthy state, if they mess up their, how they're losing the water, oftentimes they deplete magnesium to a level where they get cramps, and they're brutal cramps, like literally you're in seizure. Well, it turns out the reason for that is what you mentioned earlier, is magnesium. It is the relaxation mineral.
Any health-related information on the following show provides general information only. Content presented on any show by any host or guest should not be substituted for a doctor's advice. Always consult your physician before beginning any new diet, exercise, or treatment program.
Are you a woman suffering from sleep issues, from headaches, from menstrual issues, from hot flashes and all the things? Well, this episode is for you. This mineral might be what is causing all of your issues. Welcome to Accelerated Health with Sara Banta, where I cut through the noise and fast track your journey to better health. I'm your host, Sara Banta, CEO and founder of Accelerated Health Products and certified by the National Association of Nutritional Professionals. I'm here to share the latest on supplements, wellness hacks, and natural health solutions that actually work, from boosting energy to detoxing to balancing hormones and everything in between. I will help you reach your optimal health. So let's dive in. I'm super excited to have Wade Lightheart back. He's not only a 3-time Canadian natural bodybuilding champion and one of the world's premier authorities on natural nutrition and training methods, but he's also the co-founder of BioOptimizers, a company that I trust, that I carry, and I always say, if it's perfected out there, Accelerated Health Products does not need to recreate the wheel. And so I will pull in brands that I trust, like BioOptimizers, and especially their magnesium that I take every day. And welcome, Wade. I just had a recording with Dr. Felice Gersh talking about all PMS, fertility issues, really bad cramping in the younger generation of women. And her number one thing was magnesium. Imagine that. But we're going to be talking about magnesium for the women like me, over 40, in perimenopause and menopause, and why it's so important for us and why we're all so deficient. So welcome. How have you been?
Oh, thank you very much. I've been great. A new dad, so that's exciting.
I did not know that. Congratulations.
Thank you. So my son is now just over 7 months. So that's been a whole new experience, and I'm enjoying that whole journey. But going back to magnesium, it's a big element. Of course, that's an element in the bodybuilding world around cramping. So when bodybuilders would get on stage in an ultra dehydrated state for the stage presentation, which is not necessarily a healthy state, if they mess up their, how they're losing the water, oftentimes they deplete magnesium to a level where they get cramps, and they're brutal cramps, like literally you're in seizure. Well, it turns out the reason for that is what you mentioned earlier, is magnesium. It is the relaxation mineral. And it is, if you contract the muscle, there's your electrolyte channels, your sodium, potassium, calcium channels and stuff. But magnesium is what requires your opposing muscle, the antagonist muscle group, to relax. Insufficient magnesium levels, that cramps. Most people would experience that like in their hamstring. They get I got a cramp in my hamstring. And pretty much everybody has probably been in a dehydrated state where they cramped. It's not just the dehydration element, which is a big issue for a lot of people are underhydrated. The secondary element is a disbalance in their calcium and magnesium ratios. Too much calcium, not enough magnesium. Magnesium's the control, and they cramp. PMS and associated all sorts of pain-related um, issues due to spasms of some sort, which is basically whether that's an internal muscle or whether that's an external muscle, it's a contraction of the tissue where it is not responding because it's locked up.
Right.
And so a cramp that you get is not necessarily like a bicep. It's an internal cramping of the tissues because the balance between your minerals is off. And in North America, particularly, regardless of how healthy your diet is, we can't get sufficient amounts of magnesium. There's also, if you are subjected to high levels of EMF pollution, which we are at an increasing level, it seems that there's an increased requirements. And then the third competing factor is that we tend to have diets high in calcium and low in magnesium because we all heard calcium's, for strong bones, which is another issue that women have to deal with as their hormonal cascade starts to crash. One of the downstream effects of that is the loss of muscle mass and the loss of bone mass that leads to osteoporosis. So now the trend for females who want to live and look in their fullest and best is several fold. One, got to build muscle, right? Muscle, which was avoided by women for a long, you're not going to get huge like a bodybuilder. Forget it. Building muscle is not that easy. But strength training regularly is a real big requirement for that health aspect. The other element is getting sufficient amounts of protein, particularly early in the day. There's a big trend out there, they're 50 grams in the morning, 50 grams in the afternoon, whatever, for satiation, but also to provide enough amino acid pools that you don't start draining from your muscle tissue. Because if you don't have enough protein, or actually amino acids from protein, it's a misnomer. You don't need protein, you need the amino acids, which is a digestive process. Those amino acids, by providing sufficient amounts, that maintains your muscle mass, and that muscle mass maintains your bone mass. But even if you're doing all that and you don't have magnesium in there, your calcium magnesium ratio is off, and they operate in a 2-to-1 ratio. So what happens is calcium starts to re-regulate by dumping out of the body and accelerating the bone mass. And the easiest way to monitor this for ladies that want to watch as they go through, I would recommend, even before you hit, you hit those menopausal or premenopausal elements, go get a DEXA scan. And a DEXA scan is kind of the gold standard for looking at your body fat to lean body mass ratios. But it also will give you a scan of your bone mass and where it's distributed. And I monitor that as much as I watch my muscle mass and my body fat percentage. And it becomes very, very critical because you want to catch preemptively before you get into that bone loss area, which has all sort of detrimental aspects, because your bones produce all of the stem cells and hemoglobin and all these things that make you healthy and functional and vibrant and youthful and energetic and feeling your best, and ability of recovery is coming out of the bones. It's not just hard tissue. This is a living organism that produces a whole host of things. And magnesium is, in my opinion, more important to the North American consumer than calcium, simply because we don't get enough of it in our diets.
I feel like people are supplementing with calcium where they really don't need to. They actually have plenty of calcium in their body. It's in all the wrong places. It can be causing the arthritic issues in the joints and the calcium deposits here and there. But you need the magnesium for that bone health, and people are looking to calcium. The other thing is, I always think of calcium as constricting and magnesium relaxing, and you need that balance. So constricting too much calcium could cause a heart attack. It could cause a lot of more serious issues, and the magnesium relaxes. And anyone who has migraines, instead of reaching for that Advil, reach for the magnesium first. Can you explain why that would be so important for headaches? And that is one symptom that a lot of women with the hormonal changes later in their life, they're experiencing those headaches.
Well, you touched on three things, and I think they're all really relevant. And we'll start with the headache ones first, and if it's okay with you, I'd like to go into the other ones because you addressed some very good points there. First and foremost, when you talk about magnesium as a relaxation element, one of the key functions that it does in the body, there's over 300 different functions it's involved in, is a process called vasodilation, which is the opening up of your arteries and veins. So if you have a toxic response to food, which we call an allergic response, or to a medication, or to a suboptimal psychological or emotional state, which becomes much more sensitive when you have major fluctuations in your hormones, because it contributes to neurochemistry and how you feel and your moods, etc. Your body goes into a restrictive sympathetic response of I'm under threat and contracts. That contraction squeezes, if you imagine a garden hose and I'm just hooking a wrench onto the garden hose and squeezing that off, what that does is it restricts the flow of blood into the brain and oxygen, and the restriction of what could be potential toxic agents, either just from metabolism or other suboptimal elements that might be in your brain. And so you get a buildup of toxins and you get low oxygen. That leads to the brain fog. I can't remember where I put my keys. Oh my God, I forgot what I went to the store from, etc. And people are saying, oh, I'm starting to have, am I getting Alzheimer's, or am I losing my brain? No, you just don't have enough oxygen in your brain. That's all. And it's because of this restrictive element that's squeezing off. And I'm going to go, this also relates to heart conditions. So there is the muscular elements, which is the constriction of those arteries through that process. The other thing is the calcification inside of the arterial or venous walls. That's why you get rigidity in the veins, because they become calcified inside of that if you don't have significant magnesiums. When magnesium is present inside the bloodstream, it bonds with those calcium and you flush it out of your system, or you distribute it to some other part of the body where it's required. So I have a doctor, Dr. Gupta in the UK, not the one on CNN. He's another heart surgeon. And he uses our magnesium for his patients who are set for heart surgery. And in 25% of the cases, they don't require heart surgery anymore.
Oh my God.
He's a vascular surgeon. And he says, yeah, they're calcifying inside that. I just bump up their magnesium, and like all of a sudden their blood pressure, high blood pressure, again, oftentimes restriction. So there's always the doctor syndrome too. It's like, oh, I'm going to the doctor, and then people get stressed out and their blood pressure goes up, but they check it at home and they're fine. My dad's in that camp, right? His thing's fine. They got to go to the doctor. He starts getting nervous. His blood pressure goes through the roof, right? So we bought a home unit, and we saw the difference when he's at home, except when he goes to the doctor, it skyrockets because he's worried about having a heart condition, right? So I'm not suggesting that magnesium is a cure for heart disease, by the way, for those out there. I want to make a caveat. But what I'm saying is, here's a vascular surgeon that says, no, if we deal with this upstream problem, we don't have the calcification elements that lead to arterial sclerosis inside that. So it's a repair mechanism of the body. Then I'm going to go to the final piece that you brought up, because you illustrated three big elements. Calcification is a normal part of body function. So if you look at your elbow joints or your kneecaps, so when there is a lot of tension in the muscle tissue on your tendons, what happens, this is how we build kneecaps, is that tension from our legs being under tension from the muscular tension from walking and moving and sitting and jumping and all these things, that tension starts to calcify, which feels the bone. Same things on our elbows. Okay, this is a natural process of calcium formation. However, prolonged tension in any tissue, internal muscle tissue, wherever, you go through the same process of calcification. So the reason why someone goes that's overusing, like a pitcher that's overusing their shoulder, Well, guess what? They get calcification in here. Now you can break that up with massage, or you can break that up with sonic elements or various technologies to break that up, or they can do injections. There's all sorts of treatments, but what are they doing? They're just trying to get the calcium out of the system that's ossifying. What we find is if people are supplementing with sufficient amounts of elemental magnesium, that's the magnesium that you need that actually gets delivered to the body. Well, guess what? Your calcification process becomes checked in balance. And so these things develop over the course of lifetime. Now let's take it back to the ladies here that are listening. Ladies, what you are experiencing is basically the collection of suboptimal processes in your life that you are able to offset through your hormones. In other words, hormones, a good hormone profile can really mask a lot of nutritional deficiencies. I've seen this in the bodybuilding community for years. A lot of bodybuilders, both males and females, augment with hormones to build extra muscle, to lose body fat, to manipulate their metabolisms, etc. So they'll look really good for a period of time, and then they hit a point and they crash, or if they come off the drugs, they transform horrifically and often develop all of these hormonal issues. Bodybuilders don't live longer than regular people, even though muscle mass is a determinant of longevity, which is how are those things? Because it's how you get that. So like the bodybuilders, when you start going into your premenopause and menopausing, your hormonal cycle starts to shift. You have suboptimal hormones to what you have in the past. So all of those deficiencies that were masked during the course of your life now are exposed, and you're behind the 8 ball. And what a lot of women do is say, hey, you know what? I'm going to go to the hormone doctor. I'm going to do the Hollywood thing. I'm going to get all these hormones in here and get everything. And what the tendency is they'll go and get that done, and they'll remask the original problems. And those problems unchecked lead to a variety of unfavorable conditions that can have severe consequences. And that's why people who are listening to your podcast can get ahead of those curves before you enter into those situations, because they're present. And your general practitioner doctor isn't trained in this element. They're not going to find it. Most of your hormone doctors aren't trained in these nutritional elements or understanding these interactions and the preemptive or the postemptive. And for many of them, they're not even allowed to comment on it if they are knowledgeable about that, because they're under significant regulatory oversight, which is essentially to prescribe drugs to people to address conditions that often formed in a nutritional deficiency of some sort. And when it comes to North Americans, magnesium, as far as minerals, is front and center, number one as a thing. I would say, I know you have an amazing iodine process. That's another one that is massive as well, but you've covered that exclusively. We don't have to go into that. I would say magnesium is another one of those miracle minerals that has to be addressed. If you're not on enough iodine, crank that up first and foremost to get this, particularly in the situation, and then start looking at things like magnesium.
No, I would say those are the two. I mean, we are completely depleted. So why are we so depleted in magnesium? I mean, why does it, everybody, and you take it for granted. No one really focuses on it. It's kind of like, I should be fine. I eat healthy, right? Why are we not getting enough magnesium?
You know, I went on this quest myself because as many people might not be, or some people might not be aware, is about 8 or 9 years ago, I had my own crisis around magnesium, in that I was a serial entrepreneur. I was running 3 companies at once, living in a foreign jurisdiction under a suboptimal condition, I would say, not sleeping very well, relying on, caffeine and stuff to keep myself going, to keep on the function, high stress environment. My hormonal cascade crashed. Okay. I hooked my brain up to an EEG. I was losing all my short-term memory. right? Couldn't just, and I was like, I have good memory. And I was like, oh my God, what's going on? I can't, like, I'm walking into a room, can't remember what I walked into the room for. I was like, this is not good. Hooked my brain up to an EEG. I had a brain that looked like a 70-year-old man. Did a bunch of blood work tests and everything. And one of the things that came out was, hey, dude, you don't have enough magnesium. I'm like, I'm supplementing with magnesium. What's the deal? Like, I've been very mindful of this. All people from my ilk know that you need magnesium for maximum muscular retention. And so I went on a quest. And, well, why is it? Well, a couple of things that happened. One, a person genetically may have suboptimal methylation cycles that they can't absorb magnesium. That's number one. Number two, turns out you can't get enough magnesium in your diet. And that's because when we went to conventional farming, we used to cycle the farms. Right. You do 7 years of cycling, and you would grow different crops that different mineral groups. And then 1 year you would grow hemp and plow that into the soil to reconstitute that, to get the mineral, or maybe you put a little bit of rocks in there, and the fermentation that would happen between the fulvic acid and the plant or probiotics, the soil probiotics would actually make bioavailable minerals available to you. Like, my parents would use manure and they put tailings in there, and then they have 1 year where you leave it empty, and then it would reconstitute the soil, and then you go through that crop rotation again. Well, after World War II, when everybody moved to the city and all the industrial capacity happened, they had to go to conventional farming. Oversight from government said, we need to have these crops, these things, and then went to monoculture farming, big machinery, big elements. They started using chemicals and everything. This stripped the soil out of a lot of elements, but magnesium being a critical element. And then the fourth contributing factor is we live in a world where the availability of caffeine went exponentially. Caffeine also restricts our absorption of taking up magnesium. We started putting ourselves in high electromagnetic areas, which means there's good evidence to suggest that we need more magnesium in those environments, because the electromagnetic frequency is putting a contractive pressure inside the cellular environment. And there's also a genetic variability as to how tolerant you are to these things like the phones and the Wi-Fi and all that sort of stuff. I notice a massive difference living here in Venice than when I vacation in Sedona. I like to go to Sedona. Sedona has low Wi-Fi, low EMF. Here it's super high. I notice a massive difference in my sleep and my requirements for magnesium to feel and go my best, and I can check it on all stuff. So those are the elements that are happening. And so what happened to me, and then we went out and got all these different magnesiums. We tested them all. We sent them off to our Birch International University to see the raws, to see the elements, to see what was bioavailable, see what got delivered into the cells. Turns out that there's no one strain that outperforms everyone else. You're better off taking a plethora of the right magnesiums, and the right magnesiums relate to the bonds. So you'll see magnesium malate or orate or oxide or whatever. These, all it means is how that molecule is bonded. And we don't have proof of this, but the theory goes that when you have different bonds, they seem to be delivered to different types of the body, because magnesium is involved in over 300 processes in the body. It is the master mineral for so many things. And if you don't have enough of it, and especially as you get into suboptimal hormonal situations, the ladies listening to this podcast says, Bango, you're more susceptible to its downstream or negative effects by that deficiency.
That makes total sense. And with the EMFs, I just did a podcast on the fact that finally people are talking about the side effects of EMFs that, hasn't really been talked about like it should, that it opens up the calcium channels like floodgates. So I'm assuming that is putting this imbalance of calcium to magnesium at a more exaggerated state.
Correct. So at the cellular level, there's a thing called aquaporins. And aquaporins is almost like a contractile sphincter here that determines what flows in and out of the system. And you have these potassium, calcium, sodium, magnesium channels that are involved in seeing which way those ions will flow that's generated from that. Essentially, our cells are electrical generators. And they're built on the electrical potential both outside and inside the cell, and that's regulated by hydration and minerals inside of the body, and that allows the cell to generate power, essentially. So if you get into the ATP, or the energy performance at the mitochondrial level, it's called electron covalent transfer. Now, intracellular versus extracellular fluid is controlled by these little gatekeepers, the aquaporins, and that's regulated by these electrical channels. Yes, when you add a magnetic or electromagnetic frequency into the equation, just like if I take a magnet over a bunch of, metal pieces, or, on the ground, some nails or some file clip, some clips that you would put on your papers, or some staples, you'll see a change in the movement of those metal pieces. You can take a magnet and do this. The same thing happens to you on a Wi-Fi. Now, you go, where's the Wi-Fi that sound? Yes, it is. And if you're in an environment like I am, for example, it's not just my Wi-Fi. It's everybody's Wi-Fi. It's all of the phones. And now some people who are super sensitive are actually taking a counter through the house. And you'll find that these patterns tend in these S curves, and they'll magnify in certain parts of the house and be lower in other parts. So they're not straight line elements.
Right.
So you may find parts of the house that you don't feel good in, or you don't feel relaxed in. And almost always, if you take one of those little counters, you'll find that. Same as open plugs by your bedroom when you're sleeping can create dirty energy coming off the system because it's not grounded properly and it's radiating out. All of your electrical equipment. I know people that have to go hardline on everything because they're so sensitive to this. What I do know is people who have sufficient amounts of resources like magnesium, because your demand goes up, seem to become more resistant to those situations. It's not an absolute cure or an absolute solution, but we do what we want to do. My perspective on health, we can't control all the toxins. We can't control all the environment. We can't control all of these things. Although I am enthusiastic, supportive of what Mr. Kennedy is moving forward in the MAHA unit. I think he's making some great strides. Shout out to him and his support to that, about addressing some of these things that we've talked about for years. But for us as individuals, we have to make ourselves as resilient as possible. So we can control that. We can control our inner terrain. We can increase our vitality. And when it comes to, menopausal and all the correlated conditions around that, the margin of error is just so much less. And that's unfortunate. It sucks. We can bellyache about it. We can drink wine and cheese with their girlfriends at night and say, oh my God, what's happening? It doesn't solve it. They got to listen to you, Sara, and do what your daily habits, your daily practices, address these things and take control of your health, because you can control that. And if you do, you reap the rewards. If you don't, all of those conditions are going to get amplified and worsen and really make the next half of life more unpleasant than it needs to be. Everybody wants to be 20 and vibrant and beautiful and feeling great. The reality is we all age. We just want to slow the aging process down and make those transitions as smooth as possible.
Hey, I feel better at 49 than I did when I was 25. So there's hope. But I want to touch on some of the biggest complaints of this age group. We've got the moodiness, like the impulsive, like I cannot deal with my husband and my children right now. I'm overwhelmed. Now, to be fair, we're in the sandwich generation. We've got elderly parents we're taking care of, and we've got the growing children, and we've always said little kids, little problems, big kids, bigger problems. You just wait. When they're 18 and 20, it's more emotional. You're not changing diapers, but you've got they need you even more. So your stressors are higher, but your ability to deal with the stressors goes down. You've got more anxiety and mood swings. But then you touched on bodybuilding and muscle. But how does, women are losing muscle and they're gaining fat. Does magnesium play in the body composition? aspect of our hormonal shift, and also on the anxiety and impulsiveness that we're dealing with, all the mental stuff.
Yeah, there's several elements that are all combined here. So I'll try to break them and parse them out. Okay, so in order for you to feel your best, you need what's called neurotransmitters. Neurotransmitters, particularly serotonin, which is one that really gets crashed out when you're on the downward cycle of a hormonal cascade. And that can be, that fluctuation is much more significant. See, men go on a 24-hour cycle, women go on a 28-day cycle. And I'm just using that, some's 30 and 35 or 26. I'm going to get it right. So we're just going to use 28 days, say moon cycle. So you go through a whole hormonal fluctuation anyways, where you're more susceptible. And now there's whole books about how to work and how to live and how to train or how to rest and relax based on your hormonal cycle. But going back to the muscle building side of it in the neurotransmitter side. So to make these neurotransmitters, number one, you need the right bacteria in your gut. Second, you need a sufficient amount of amino acids. That means your digestive process has to be, you have to eat enough protein. You got to be converting that protein into the amino acids so that you can feed those bacteria, the good bacteria, to make the neurotransmitters for your brain. One of the precursors to that neurotransmitter formation and healthy flora is, guess what? Magnesium. In fact, a little bit of magnesium has a massive effect. At our the Birch International University, which we have a partnership with in Bosnia, there's 20 PhDs and master students. We have a complete digestive system in here, and we can actually see we've looked at all the different bacteria that are out there. There's hundreds of strains out there. What happens when you put this in? What happens when you do that? What neurotransmitters are made by the bacteria? What phytonutrients? Magnesium is one of the biggest things to assist these bacteria to perform their functions. Serotonin is massive. So when someone is on SSRIs, is they're trying to regulate their serotonin stuff so they don't have mood disorders or depressive states that are being treated pharmacologically have their basis in insufficient or unstable amounts of serotonin. Your hormonal cycle determines at what point of the cycle change that you'll be able to make that. Again, if you don't have sufficient protein, where are you going to get those amino acids? Well, you're going to pull that out of your muscle tissue. If you don't have enough magnesium, you're going to pull it out of your muscle tissue. If you have electrolyte imbalances because you have too much calcium and not enough magnesium, you're not going to have the magnesium in order to make that. You're not going to build the muscle, and you're not going to feel like going to the gym, and you're going to be in that suboptimal state, and you don't have the hormones to go out there. And so you're sitting in your car coming from the grocery store, and you just burst out crying, and you don't know why. Well, that's because of all of these things that are happening.
Yeah.
Now, magnesium becomes that element both on the muscle building side. It also, by the way, is a blood sugar regulator. So what happens when you have suboptimal serotonin levels? Well, here's what happens. You're going to crave sugar. Why? Because when you take sugar combined with fats, maybe you want to stack some caffeine with that too, right? Like your local Starbucks run, what are they doing? They're giving you sugar, fats, and caffeine. So while you're sitting talking about your problems with your girlfriend at the coffee shop with your caramel macchiato, super latte, venti, whateverness, you're feeling awesome. You're feeling heard. You feel everything's great. She's got the same problems as you. You're knocking back this stimulants. Everything's flowing. You get out to the car. Little Johnny calls you. Little Sarah called you with the problem, and you're like, "Oh my God, my life's a mess. I hate it." And now you're running the blood sugar crash. You've got a caffeine crash. You're not absorbing your magnesium. You can't get the serotonin. So that high was just a roller coaster coming up to drop you off the cliff. And your blood sugar has been dysregulated. And once you fall below that, then you get into what I call the starving and craving cycle. Or starving and polluting. you starve yourself of the essential nutrients you want, and then you pollute yourself with the stimulatory quick fixes that you need to offset this suboptimal brain state. It works for 30 minutes or an hour,
Right.
and then you need another hit, and then another hit. And all of those are very caloric rich elements with very little nutrients. They're built to take away your satiety. And the lower the satiety of a product, the more that you will consume that product. So for example, Coca-Cola was designed as the first zero satiety beverage of all time. So if you eat blueberries or fruit or something, there's a certain amount you eat and then you just don't want to eat anymore. That's the satiety factor. Well, what they found when they designed Coca-Cola, the most successful beverage company in the history of the world, why was that? Because they built something that you could consume that stimulated you and gave you no satiety and boosted your blood sugar and sent you off to the races. And by the way, a lot of those non-calorie sweeteners like acylsulfame, potassium, and all these things, they create an insulin spike without the sugar. So you still ride the crash, and then there's a bunch of dysregulatory elements on your neurochemistry, et cetera. So all of that to say, getting magnesium, proper amino acids, regular strength training, and offsetting these suboptimal hormonal states is the number one goal that women have to embrace. And they've got to put that first over everything else. Because if you're in a suboptimal resource state and you're falling apart metabolically or externally, you're not able to show up at your best for your relationships, for your work, for your kids, all of those elements that you want to. And I have so much empathy for this. I've been on our tour, as I told you.
Yeah.
For whatever reason, I'm the new spokesman for middle-aged females. I never knew I was ever going to get into this as a former bodybuilding champion. But I so understand this issue because it was so prevalent in the bodybuilding community for different reasons, but the fundamentals are the same thing. So we can learn from Formula One cars. I don't want to drive around a track at 200 miles an hour. That seems crazy to me. But I'll take the tire technology. I'll take the handling systems. I'll take the braking technology that I can apply on my daily driver so I can navigate back and forth to the items in my life safely as well. So that those people pushing the edge will bring us the technology that allows us our day-to-day lives to be better. And that's what we did in that community. And that's where Bioptimizers come in, taking high performance, super high level stuff, extracting the principles, and then providing those principles in a boiled down format and making those suggestions and providing those nutrients to allow people to live their best life.
Yeah. And when we're going through this stage, our ovaries we essentially have an organ that's dying, and our adrenals have to take over the job of producing hormones. So our adrenals are being tapped more than our 20-year-old self. So my daughters can go work out for 4 hours, no problem. I cannot at this age anymore, right? So when your adrenals are being tapped or you're under stress, and I don't know any woman over 40 that's not under chronic stress, you're using more iodine, you're using more salt, and my guess is you're using more magnesium than when you're not in a stressed state. So that is where the need gets jacked up even more for all of these things.
Well, you brought up a very important hormone, and that's cortisol. So adrenaline, your adrenals produce adrenaline and cortisol in order to create a stimulatory fight or flight response. It's basically, this is a sympathetic response to a situation. And as you become more and more dependent on that adrenal response in the system, the burn rate on your body, mm-hmm. So you talk about accelerated health. This is accelerated aging. So while you're waking up and you're looking in the mirror and going, where did these lines come in from? Why did the bags come out? Why am I so poofy around, my middle? It used to be so good. Your cortisol level is going through the roof as you move to that secondary element because you're not producing your regular hormone cycle. So yes, you're right. You have to be more strategic with your training, more concentrated around that, more involved on the rest cycle. You probably got to pull back the caffeine that you've been running on for a period of time. And you're going to go through a down period as you re-regulate and reset your adrenal access. And, it's the same thing on the thyroid. You had a whole program around the thyroid or resetting the thyroid. It's the same thing. So again, many of these situations, you were able to out hormone most of your life. Yeah. And now you just don't have that. So the hormonal bank account is dry. You're going to the bank machine and it's saying rejected. That's what you're experiencing. And we call that accelerated aging. And what you're advocating is accelerated health, which is reversing that trend, providing all these nutrients, providing all these elements in a strategic format that allows you to feel your best self. And that's why I'm so passionate about talking about this, because it doesn't have to be a death sentence, but you can't screw around on this. You can't wait. You can't biohack your way out of it. There's no cheat codes here. Right. There's no fast solution. Hormones, externalized hormones. Hey, great if you want to use it. It's only going to accelerate the underlying problem if you don't address it. So I'm not against those things, but you got to deal with the fundamentals, and you got to deal with the fundamentals fast.
Yeah. Wade, we're pretty much out of time, but before you go, I want you to quickly explain the 7 different magnesiums in Magnesium Breakthrough and why you don't just go to Whole Foods and grab a magnesium supplement off the shelf. I mean, even the big companies out there, some that I represent even, have just magnesium citrate or whatever. And it's not that that's bad, but it's incomplete, and it's not going to give your body what it needs.
So again, thank you for that. So we looked at virtually every single type of magnesium out there and tested them independently and in combination. And what we were able to discover in our labs is that you were able to get more elemental magnesium into your body if you did a multi-component magnesium, and you got a better effect from that magnesium, both from a biological reference level and also from what people responded to. Okay, the reason why that is if you take too much magnesium, you break the GI barrier and you get the runs. The most common element that does that is magnesium citrate. It happens to be the most inexpensive magnesium to make, and that's why a lot of companies use citrate. Now, citrate does have the benefits if people are suffering from constipation. The reason why it draws water into the intestines. It can also be used for acid indigestion as well. So there's a hydrating aspect to it. Oftentimes, acid indigestion is you don't have sufficient amount of hydration, which leads to that. There's also some bacteria overgrowth issue, but that's for another issue. And then constipation is oftentimes you don't have hydration in the intestines. So those two elements can be covered with citrate. You want a little bit of citrate in your molecule, but not too much. Then we have things, one of the most popular, bisglycinate. When we talked about high blood pressure and diabetes and osteoporosis and migraine headaches and depression, a lot of research goes into bisglycinate. You'll also see it listed as glycinate sometimes, but bisglycinate is the actual best form of that. So that will provide the benefits according to the research around those things. Magnesium malate, that's a detoxification and fatigue elements. We talked about producing energy. For some reason, it seems to also assist in getting aluminum from the body. So people are losing aluminum cook pots and all that sort of stuff. You've got to be mindful of it. Get a metal test. Aluminum can be very disruptive to so much of your process, but it's involved in all your enzymatic activities, that magnesium. Then we have magnesium taurate, another one for cardiovascular health. Also cognitive, it's kind of replaces or mimics the amino acid taurine, and that taurine creates GABA aminobutyric acid, which is a neurotransmitter that blocks impulses between nerve cells in the brain. That's an anxiety reducing element inside of your body to feel calm and relaxed and feel your best. It also creates a brain-derived neurotrophic factor, and there's some evidence. This one here is particularly good for lowering PMS syndromes, cramping and stuff, irritability, maintenance, stuff like that. I think, again, it goes back to that taurine GABA response as well. We got magnesium orotate. This is oftentimes the athletic magnesium, particularly because it's nerve function, heart rhythm. You've seen those athletes that have heart rhythms, particularly in basketball. Oftentimes it's because of disbalances and poor hydration. They're dehydrating and have disruptive in their in how their hearts fluctuate. So magnesium is involved in those electrical transmissions. It's also why that doctor I told you about, the vascular surgeon. Then we have what's called magnesium sucrosomial. Sucrosomial is a glycolipid that takes magnesium oxide, which is usually not that well absorbed in the body, but you wrap that molecule in that glycolipid and it serves as a massive boost on delivering you elemental magnesium. So where other people put magnesium oxide, which is not that good, wrap it in that glycolipid molecule and now it becomes a super magnesium. We got that in there, as well as magnesium chelate, which is an amino acid structure that allows the breaking down of magnesium. So that in combination in the right portions and the right amounts has led to what we call magnesium breakthrough. And it turns out we're the fastest growing magnesium in America today. We've probably got the highest volume sales, and we're going against companies that have been in the industry for 40 years. Virtually nobody can compete with us because not only do we put those magnesiums in, but our lab can determine beyond the lab assay bioavailability, bioactivity, where other people just have a lab assay and they trust it. They don't know if it works in the body. So all of that combines, plus our 365-day, 100% money back guarantee if people try our products and it doesn't blow them away from everything else. So 2 capsules will outperform 6, 8, sometimes 10 of another competing brand because you're getting so much of this elemental magnesium in a multitude of form. When people try it, they go, I didn't feel much from magnesium before. I've been taking a couple caps before bed on this. I sleep better. I feel better. I don't have the cramping. I've noticed improvements in my mood. You do that for 30 days, and I can guarantee 100%.
Yeah.
And we put our money behind it that you're going to feel a difference and know the difference, and that's what our goal is.
And I love that you touch on just the quality of your ingredients and the bioavailability. And I speak endlessly about the supplement industry and how much junk is out there, the fillers, the mold, the bacteria, the toxins that you're introducing into your body, the lack of transparency, maybe the supplement doesn't even have in it what it says it does. And so you have to really be careful with what you're buying out there, unfortunately. And so that's why I love your company and especially the Magnesium Breakthrough. Personally, like I mentioned, I love the new tart cherry magnesium breakthrough at night. It's a nice sweet drink. I'll put it either in hot water for a warm tea, or I'll put it in just cold water just as a sweet treat, but then it also calms me down and helps with my sleep. And I love it, but I also love the raspberry as well. So Wade, thank you for doing all the work you're doing and for providing my listeners and my customers with an amazing magnesium supplement, especially us women who need it, for our stress, for our brain fog, for our energy, for our muscle, for our bones, for all the things. Our wheels don't have to come off. They can be tighter than ever, and we can live our better half, the second half of life. So don't get discouraged, you women out there. I wake up with more energy now than I did when I was 20. So there's a reason. Wade, where can people find you, especially your podcast and everything else you're doing?
Yeah, all things Bioptimizers and social media and all that stuff. You can just type in Bioptimizers, you'll find us. And of course, we have the Awesome Health Podcast. You've been a guest many times on that podcast. We've been running that for a long time, where we dive deep into those elements. And of course, you can reach out to any of our support teams. We have real people that answer the phones, the emails, the questions, the texts, whatever you sort of communicate. We believe in human-to-human contact. We want to hear your stories. We want to address your challenges, and we want to make a difference in your life. And so that's how we run our company. And we're delighted to be on the show. Thank you for having us. And to all your ladies out there, you are worth it. Your health is worth it. And you deserve to put yourself, your physicality, and as a priority, because by taking care of yourself, you're more capable of taking care of the people around you, which we're so dependent on.
Absolutely. When we fall down, the rest of the world falls down. We have to hold everybody up. So you're right on that. Thank you, Wade, for being here.
Thanks so much.
I hope you're rethinking the importance of magnesium. We're so depleted. It's hard to get in enough, right? And especially as we're in the second half of our lives, us women, and there's so much on our plate. The the stressors, the fact that we need to maintain and hopefully build muscle, our bone health, our brain fog, our adrenal health, our thyroid, everything. And it's all dependent on magnesium. Well, Wade also mentioned the importance of amino acids, and that's why I came out with the accelerated aminos. Yes, it's great for the bodybuilders. Yes, it's great for my 22-year-old son. Yes, it's great for my 18-year-old daughter's rowing team. But it was designed for us women because typically we don't eat enough protein. And Wade even mentioned it's not even just the amount of protein you're eating, it's how much protein your body is assimilating. And that's why the accelerated aminos, it is the fastest assimilating amino acid supplement out there. Gets absorbed within 15 minutes. It's got ingredients like HMB, orotic acid, OKG. What do those do? Those prevent muscle breakdown. If our muscles break down, guess what? It turns to fat. We get fatter. We get less muscle. That's not what we want. You are not going to get big. I try to get big every single day. It's very difficult. So you're not going to get big. The accelerated aminos is going to give you more energy, more brain activity, more energy and motivation to go to the gym, to do the work in the gym, to build the muscle, burn the fat, all the things. So that is a very nice complement to the magnesium breakthrough. I love, like I mentioned, the tart cherry flavor, but if you're not a powder person and you don't like sweet things like me, you can just do the capsules. And Wade typically says the dosage is just increase your dosage slowly until you have loose stools and then back off. And that will kind of show you where your deficiency is. But it is one of those elements that you need to take daily because your body will flush out what you don't use. So hopefully this was helpful. Thanks for tuning in to Accelerated Health with Sara Banta. I hope you got the tools and inspiration to take the next steps on your health journey. Head to SaraBantaHealth.com for health articles or more. Join the free group coaching on Telegram to ask your questions and get insights from me on a daily basis. And you can use coupon podcast10 if you want to try out Magnesium Breakthrough in the capsules or the drink formulas at acceleratedhealthproducts.com. Give it a try. See how you feel. And if you love what you heard today, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, send this to your friends, especially your women friends that are over 40, because when you do, it helps more people get this podcast and be able to help them on their health journeys. You can listen to this podcast, Accelerated Health with Sara Banta, on Spotify, Apple, YouTube, E360, iHeartRadio, and over 100 different platforms. We're everywhere. And remember, I'm live every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. So join me next time for more ways to unlock your health potential.